here at Cranfield Studios talking about women in sales because it's International Women's Week. Sorry for a few technical gremlins, we're a little bit late, but I'm really delighted to be joined by Becci O'Shea. And here she is. And this is the first time we're going to be together this week, isn't it, Becci? So we're going to be together on Thursday. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted because we were sweating a bit with a few of the technical issues, but your actual degree was all about like media and everything, wasn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, my dream was to be a TV presenter, so it's all coming true today.
Well, we're hoping you'll become a regular host. And I know when we were kicking about backstage before we started, I was actually saying that the camera puts a few pounds on people. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's actually £10 that it puts on, so it's quite a lot actually.
So how many cameras are on me right now? About 5, is that right? So Becci, it's Women in Sales and Women International Women's Week, and we met 6 months ago and started chatting about actually some of the things that are important in sales. But today's about gender. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Becci. I head up Sales Enablement at Marcura. We support the maritime industry, and I started in sales about 10 years ago, which is crazy because it's absolutely flown by. But I, like I said, originally wanted to be a TV presenter or a radio presenter because I just love communications. I love people. I'm a massive people person. So a career in sales kind of felt quite natural to me. And I sort of fell in love with the pace of it. I think for me, I like a sort of ever-changing landscape, and I like to be, stimulated in that way. Obviously, it's ever-changing, which is exciting. So that's how I started, and currently still going. Although recently, so it'll be a year in April, I transitioned into enablement. So I've previously been an SDR, an account exec from SMB through to mid-market to enterprise, and now leading the enablement team. So that's a little bit of my background.
And what's great is you clearly have a passion for it because you've got a broad smile across your face. There's always a skip in your voice when you talk about it. What do you really like about sales and obviously sales enablement?
Yeah, again, I think it's going back to the fact that I just love people. I think I count myself quite lucky to be able to work with people every day and consistently learn new things. I'm reading a few books at the moment that have all been recommended to me by people that I've met over the past 6 months, actually from the conference that we were at together, Andy. And so I think for me, I just find it's interesting, it's exciting. And I like the fact that you can never really be a master within sales because there's always something new to learn. As soon as you think you get to a point where you know a lot, it's like something new has happened, the industry has shifted, and therefore we now need to readapt and start from square one. So I think, that's why it kind of keeps me on my toes, and that's why I love the pace of what we do. Yeah.
So for your company, though, I mean, we talked a little bit about this before Christmas when we were together. It blew me away in terms of, what your company does, but particularly now you must have to be, as you say, on your toes with kind of what's going on, particularly around kind of like the Red Sea and those areas. Are things really changing for all your salespeople all the time?
Yeah, I think our sales team, they constantly have to have their finger on the pulse. Maritime is an industry where you're quite right, things can change overnight. There's a lot of topics that we need to be aware of. So our sales team are quite well versed now in keeping their finger on the pulse, staying incredibly close to our customer base and our prospects, and just understanding how we can serve them best. Marcura as a company, we are completely dedicated to our customers. Customers are truly at the heart of everything that we do. So I think we try and demonstrate that by gaining a deep understanding of what they're facing and obviously how we can support them, with whatever it is that they're trying to achieve or whatever challenges that they're facing at present.
Okay, so, obviously it is International Women's Week. Actually, our late edition, we've got 5 shows that are going out 5 o'clock UK time that are run out of Boston, actually completely and utterly fronted by women, and then a panel session on Friday. So for anybody out there, please kind of look at the other episodes that are going on. But But Becky, I'm going to change kind of pace here, and you know, obviously we've talked about the questions, but this is the thorny one, which is, you know, do you think sales is kind of an equal opportunity employer?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think sales, like many industries, has made some quite significant strides towards gender equality, you know, in recent years. But I think we're still facing challenges in sort of achieving that like complete parity. You know, historically, sales roles have absolutely been dominated by men. And personally speaking, I've been the only salesperson or the only female salesperson in teams at companies that I've worked at 3 times. So I was once in a team of 14 and I was the only female there. So I've seen it myself for sure. And although we're making those strides towards gender equality, you know, we've still got quite a long way to go. There's some interesting stats that I was looking at last night. And one was by McKinsey, which proved that organizations with gender diversity are actually 21% more likely to generate higher profits. So I think it's very important that as an industry, we look at the factors which influence the level of gender equality within sales and obviously try and do something about that. It's not really sort of, you know, for the women to prove themselves in that way. I think we've already done that. I think it's, you know, for our male allies like yourself and obviously all of the other amazing guys that we work with to kind of help us break that down, because I don't think that we're where we should be yet, although we are moving slowly further towards that.
No, and I violently agree with you at the very start of the vision of the Institute of Sales Professionals. But when we were called the APS, we did some work with EY, and they kindly gave us a whole lot of time and resource, and we found that actually sales teams, this is going back 10 years, that had a gender balance were 7% more successful against their goals than the male-dominated teams. So yeah, the data's there, and recently working with Exactly, who have a huge amount of data around performance and motivation and salary, etc. We're saying that actually female-led teams were about 8% more productive and successful, and actually also more loyal. So hugely advantageous to have female-led organizational sales teams for various other financial reasons as well. So it makes massive financial sense.
Yeah.
How did you feel though when you were one of 14?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. And I vividly remember we had a new VP of sales join the company I was at the time. And obviously he sort of inherited our team of 14, me being the only girl on it. And actually it was quite funny internally. We would be called Becky and the boys because it was just me and all the boys. And when the new VP of sales joined, he came over to my desk and said to me, look, we've got open headcount on our team. You know, I really want to make our team a little bit more inclusive. You know, we absolutely need to look at this, you know, inequality that we have right now. How do we do that? So he and I had a long conversation about how we could attract more women to apply to the open headcount, because we saw that the majority of the applications that he was having come through were men. So I think it's interesting in that regard. You know, there's a lot that companies can do to attract more women to apply. You know, that can range from making sure that, you know, you're talking about flexible work hours, so that, you know, if there's a female that's potentially looking at applying, but she might have some caregiving responsibilities, let's just make sure that she feels that she can apply, because you've mentioned that's something that you'd consider. You know, also in things like inclusive initiatives at your business, talk about that in your job applications as well. So he and I had this long conversation about how we could change what we were doing, and that was, you know, quite beneficial. We did change, you know, the ratio slowly over time, but I think unfortunately there are still organizations where we see that, and you know, it can be a little bit off-putting as a female for sure.
So you've just raised a couple of really fascinating points, as I knew you would. So I'm going to go slightly off script, but they're not hard questions. I want to talk about language in job adverts. Do you think there's an issue there that actually the language that we use tends to attract men, where it tends to detract or put females and women off?
In terms of the language, I'm not sure. I can answer that sort of from my perspective, but I wouldn't be able to answer that from like a general basis. What I would say is that, you know, within applications, I think touching back on what I just said a second ago, things like mentioning your flexible work arrangements, you know, mentioning things like leadership opportunities, you know, we see a massive underrepresentation of women in specific sales leadership roles, as you mentioned a second ago. Mentioning things like that will obviously appeal more to women. I think also, you know, ensuring that your workplace culture is supportive and inclusive. So mentioning that. And I think also one other thing to add here is that women in general are less likely to take risks. So in general, if there is a job application that says, you know, here's our 10 points of criteria, you know, the person we're looking for must meet all of these different attributes that we're looking for, it's less likely that women will apply for that. Even if they hit 9 out of 10 of those requirements, we're less likely to take that risk. So it's important that, you know, people think about this when they're looking to hire a diverse team, and that they, you know, mention those points I said a second ago to make it attractive, but also, you know, be aware that women are less likely to apply if you've got that quite strict criteria that you're looking to meet. I've definitely looked at job applications and you know, thought I don't want to waste anyone's time if I apply for this. You know, I'm not 100% what they're looking for. I just won't bother. And that seems to be true for a lot of women.
Yeah, very true. I mean, that also plays out in education, doesn't it? And I mean, my daughter is just doing her mocks and going into GCSEs. And
Yeah.
you know, young females work exceptionally hard to actually achieve academic success and revise, and would feel very uncomfortable potentially going into an exam despite having worked many hours and done lots of revision, whereas boys will go in and you know, just for want of a better way, blag it. And I think that's what you were talking about in terms of, yeah, they may only hit six of the criteria, but they'll apply for the thing anyway.
Yeah, and I think like you had Laurie Richardson on your in your studio recently, and she, within her book She Sells, which is a fantastic book, by the way, if anyone's listening to this and haven't read it, I would massively promote that. It's a fantastic read. She also talks a lot about the fact that, you know, it used to be seen as like a lack of confidence for women, you know, so people would think, oh, you know, if she's not going to apply for this job, but she hits 8 or 9 out of the criteria points, then she must have a lack of confidence. But actually it's not. What Laurie talks about is the fact that, you know, women don't want to waste people's time. They don't want to, you know, apply and then say, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Whereas you're right, you know, when we see men applying, they might be a little bit less worried about that. They don't see that as a risk. So I think that's quite an interesting data point, and certainly one to be, cognizant of if you're looking at hiring at the moment. Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. So again, picking up on something that you said around, you know, flexibility in childcare, flexibility in other aspects.
Yeah.
I think certainly before the pandemic, let's be brutally honest, males just considered, well, okay, I've got to be in the office from 8 till 6, you know, and that's ridiculous now. We've all proved that we can work in a digital connected world. Surely shouldn't that open up a huge amount of potential people who can come back into sales? You know, it's an issue that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but at this point in time, it's only females that can give birth. So a lot of that does mean that there has to be a career break, but it's not easy. But surely now we should be able, as you know, I go to the school run, I'll go and do things.
Yeah.
Surely that should be consigned to the scrap heap of theory.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, you know, again, looking at the data, we lost a lot of women during the pandemic. So a lot of women in sales roles left during COVID, and that sort of break that we had where work changed and we had to adapt quite quickly. So I think you're right. At the moment, we're in a position where we can start to encourage that again, and obviously rebuild what was kind of destroyed during the pandemic. And like you said, you know, it's a lot more flexible now in terms of who does what within the household. You know, in my company internally, I work really closely with our SDR manager who has 2 young children, and he has a lot of responsibilities at home. So I think it's the world has changed, which means that we can now change and hopefully encourage, more women to get back into what they loved doing, but had to give it up for various reasons during that time. So yeah, I agree. I think we're in a position where we can do something about this now, which is exciting.
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, we talk about this, and it's continually an example that I keep coming back to, which is the Avon Cosmetics when I was in my previous employer, where we went in to see the CIO, the buyer, and her entire team were female, and we took an entire team of men in.
Yeah.
And she said, "What's wrong with this picture?" And she's right. So one of the things I've been poking around at, Becci, is actually trying to find statistics around gender balance in sales, and there is a fascinating site, and hopefully you and I can release that as a bit of a post later, that actually breaks down lots of different sales roles, but also looks at procurement. And one of the things that I found was at the higher level sales management and the high level procurement management, the gender numbers were roughly about the same. No surprise, skewed more towards men. But actually at what they called the buying level and the procurement manager, it was 2/3 female. Now, if we then look at the technical buyers now, which when I mean they're not in that category, but they could be people working in engineering and STEM industries, where there's been a huge push to get young women into there. There must be this massive swing now that we've got quite an industry full of older, predominantly white men having conversations with buyers that don't look anything like them. Is that, do you think, a burning platform we should be going, this is now time to accelerate the change that we need to if we're going to be customer centric?
Absolutely. I think, aside from obviously the benefits of having gender equality that we've already touched on, for the business, so for the business that you're working for, aside from that, I think you're absolutely right. It's important to think about your customers, your prospects. They too will benefit from being able to relate to your team. A gender balanced team can offer insights into how effectively, they can reach those various segments of the market. It can, I think if you have a gender balanced team, that can also lead to increased creativity, better understanding of customers, improved communication, higher employee satisfaction. There's so much that comes with it. And sort of by prioritizing that diversity and that inclusion, companies can then create the stronger, more effective sales teams that are much better positioned to meet the needs of today's diverse marketplace. There needs to be like a true reflection, and your buyers, your customers, your prospects, they need to be able to relate to that team. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So I think there's a multitude of benefits that can kind of span across both the business itself internally, and then also what they're doing in the market and how well they're being received.
So this is really, really, really cool stuff. And there's a couple of questions that I'm going to ask, but I'm going to go back when the person that came in and went, okay, it's Becci and the boys. Actually, Becci, you might be on Eurovision if you keep going like that. But in reality about it is, A, how did you feel about being asked that question? But B, what was your advice to change it? Because if we've got everybody who's going to look at all of this and tune in, how did you advise them to change and get more gender balance in that team?
Yeah, so I was quite blunt. I'm quite an honest person. You know me well by now.
I don't think you're going to cut it in sales.
Yeah, exactly. And it felt like a bit of a boys' club where I was working. So I raised that, and actually, I was good friends with the team. They were lovely in terms of, working with them. But I think we all sort of knew there was an issue because there was only one female, which was me. So I raised the point, we don't want this to feel like a boys' club, because that's, not a good environment. That's not a good culture. And also it's not a good reflection of our business. The business that I was working for was a super reputable business, great company. And we sort of we pride ourselves on our Glassdoor reviews and all of that sort of stuff. So together we decided to make a difference, and that's why we had such a positive outcome, because it wasn't just me and my voice on my own saying, I don't like this, can we change this? It was actually all of us together saying, yeah, this is wrong, we don't want this, it's not fair and it's not right. And also it's it's not good for us in terms of our success. Again, like not being able to relate to the market, not having a broad set of ideas when we're getting creative in the boardroom about what we can do about our prospecting and stuff like that. We had too much of one opinion and not enough of the other. So it was a challenge that we took on together as a collective, as a unit. And, they were massively allies to me in terms of helping us be more gender equal internally. So yeah, it was something that I didn't face on my own, which made it a much easier challenge to overcome. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, and there's a comment here from Alex, who said, providing mentorship for aspiring females is really, really important. Where do you see mentorship and role modeling as a part of what is the answer to this?
Oh, it's so important. I mean, I'm so lucky because I have so many mentors, and so many of my sort of former sales managers are still really good friends of mine. So I'm really lucky in the sense that I have a great network of people that I can call on for that sort of thing. And so in return, I try and do that as well. In fact, one of the reasons why my transition into enablement was so smooth from being an enterprise account exec into enablement is because I just love mentorship. I love coaching. I love listening to a call and then debriefing it with the person who led it, or if it was me leading it, I love debriefing it with my boss or one of my peers to kind of get their read on how well it went and any risk that they picked up. So that kind of mentorship and that feedback loop is very natural to me. And I think that mentorship in these scenarios where we're talking about women in tech and how we can elevate female voices is so important for us to unite with our male allies to kind of make this change. So I would encourage mentorship 1,000,000%. And, my LinkedIn is always open to new connections. And that's one of my favorite things about what I do is the community that we have in sales. So yeah, long may that last.
You raise another point, so I'm going to seize on that, which is absolutely great, which is, at the start of this call, we had Adam and Alex potentially going to join us as well, and we made all the decision to go, doesn't it look a bit odd, three old white guys talking to Becci about, women in sales? It looks a bit genderly imbalanced. But actually, until men care about this, until they really embrace this and say, I've got to have a gender diverse, I've got to have inclusivity and then diversity, I believe that one comes before the other, then things aren't necessarily going to change. Actually, as a man, I do find it quite hard to mentor and always have to mentor females. Not because I don't want to, but it always seems like an uncomfortable dynamic that, there's a line. Yeah, and you know where those lines are with men when you're coaching men, but with women, sometimes men would feel that's not. I don't know where and how I can act as well. So if you actually think about how do we help men be better mentors to females and park some of that stuff, because I found it really difficult, not because I didn't want to, but because there was something in there going, am I getting this right? Am I crossing a line? Am I being safe and right in this? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think those questions that you just asked yourself in retrospect there is the way to go. Asking, is this right? How do you like to be coached? How do you want to receive mentorship? And also by being an ally to females, it's impossible to get it wrong because you're coming from a good place. You may well say the wrong thing at one point, but they won't take it as in it was, with malicious intent because, you're only human, but you are an ally to females. So they know it came from a good place. I know exactly what you mean. And I think, it's actually great that you're asking yourself that question and that you've just asked me, because that shows that you're willing to do something about this and you're taking it seriously. And I think that's the most important thing. So don't be afraid to, get something wrong. Just show your support and show that it's coming from a good place, and ask those questions around how you want to be mentored, how you want these conversations to go. What can I do for you? And also, how can I support you in other areas? Can I introduce you to other people? Can I, potentially repost something that you've posted on LinkedIn about gender equality? Is there something that I can do to show that I'm supporting you outside of our mentorship, so that it's not just these conversations, but I'm also, a member of your community, and I'm here showing my support. I think there's a lot that you can do to show that, but starting with those sorts of conversations is the right place. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask $1 billion question here. It's a bit of fun. Are women better salespeople than men?
You know, Andy, it's not about who's better. It's not about who's better than who. You know, it's about all of us being better together. I think that's my truthful answer. You know, obviously there's the stats that you've mentioned earlier. You know, and in She Sells, there's amazing data to look at if you're a sales manager and you're just interested to know. I would absolutely read that, and that will give you, you know, an answer to that question. But for me, truthfully, it's not about, you know, who's better than who. It is about being better together. And there's nothing better than a gender equal workplace where you have incredible opinions and voices from different backgrounds, different genders, and you're able to come together and do something amazing and truly feel like a part of something. To me, that's the most important thing, and that's what we should strive for. So yeah, it's not a who's better than who. It's how we can support each other to be the best that we can be as a unit, as a collective.
I think it's a really good answer, but I'm going to get off the fence and go from some of the studying that I've done here at Cranfield. I actually think there's a lot of traits that females and women have more naturally that are now being shown to be actually the determinants of more successful. Empathy, inquiry, things like that. So it was actually, you know, a bit of an interesting question to lead into. I believe women and a lot of the attributes that they have are set up for being a very successful modern seller. And I think men do need to start to look at those things. There's even one as an example, Becci, called quiet ego, which is something about having that resilience, a little bit of ego, but actually giving somebody on the other side of the buying equation lots of time and space to be themselves. And I actually don't think men, a lot of sales guys I know, not all, are nowhere near about having a quiet ego. It's a gigantic ego that normally is arriving 2.5 hours before they do. I actually think there is a lot of science that says, okay, it's not about actually a woman or a man, but it's about the attributes that are more naturally in females. You know, I recognise it in my wife. You know, I don't coach my children because I'm bloody awful at it, but my wife's pretty good at that kind of stuff. You know, and she's very successful at business as well. So no surprise, a lot of the things that are required to be very successful, you know, the matriarchal leader in our house has got them in abundance, not dad. And I think that actually happens in a lot of sales environments as well.
Yeah.
So to end the question, do you think we'll ever get to complete gender equality in sales?
I would like to say I hope so, and I have seen it. You know, I've got so many awesome connections now in the field, and I'm lucky enough to go and visit, you know, their offices and meet their sales teams. And I have walked into sales floors in the past now where I've seen, from what I can tell, a pretty equal space, which is amazing. But until that's the case for every company, then obviously it won't be a 100% yes. So I think we have a long way to go, but I think we have so much to look forward to in the next few years. And, you know, again, sort of working and uniting together in this way is just really motivating for people like me to keep going and to keep talking with people like you on platforms like this, because we know that the, you know, the results are there, right? Like going back to all the stats, there's so much to look forward to, both from a business perspective and also from a female perspective around things like gender pay equality. You know, I'd love to see a time where that is completely equal, because that's what we deserve. So yes, I think that it's possible. We have a long way to go, but we should push forward now more than ever with more force, to make that happen.
Well, you're always going to get that support from Sales TV and Cranfield and the ISP. So I want to thank you. Hopefully we're going to be able to announce that you're going to be a fairly regular host for us here as we drive for obviously more equality. So I really do hope you enjoyed it and you'll come back and host a few sessions for us. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday, and I would like to say thank you everyone who's been watching out there. This is a really important issue. There's another 5 shows that are happening around the world right now throughout the week, so please join into them, and you'll see from Sales TV and all we're doing with our partners, that we are absolutely taking this for the rest of the year. This is not just about this week. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody here in the studios, Toby, Chris, Marco and Robin, and have a great day.